Hello,
Hi everyone.
hello. Hey everyone, nice to have you here. And welcome to the detailed diagnostic session today. We're Train Search live surgery session where we're going to be sharing with you some help with diagnosing your client's challenges in order to determine the right solution. How important is this bit, Jordan?
Very, very important in my experience. I suppose to put some context around that, I would like you all to imagine that you walk into a doctor's surgery and you tell the doctor, he or her, that you've got an awful headache. The doctor says, no problem, I've got the perfect tablets for you. Would you take the tablets? I don't think I would at that stage. The reason I'm sharing this is to really highlight the importance of the diagnostic stage. If the doctor doesn't ask detailed questions, you ultimately have very little faith in their recommendation. Really, what you'd want is the doctor to be asking, how long has the headache been hurting? When does it hurt? What have you tried so far to fix the problem? Did that work? Even if the doctor doesn't tell you their credentials, their qualifications, you still have more faith in their eventual recommendation. And our consultation, Louise, is exactly the same, right?
Yeah, totally. So, yes, of course, I've got to find out the specifics of the requirement. What do they want? Where? What skill set are they looking for? All the things that you'd normally do. But I've also got to determine if a contingent approach is going to be adequate or if a retained solution is necessary.
Mm.
So, is it a niche skill set? Is it a difficult location? Is it a senior or a critical hire? Are there loads of candidates, but very few very good ones? Or hardly any candidates at all, and it's fiercely competitive? Is it an aged requirement? So there's been lots of things done in it already and they haven't found a solution. Or does the company have a poor brand in the market? All of these things indicate that a more rigorous approach is going to be necessary. But before recommending anything, in order to build credibility in the eventual recommendation, I've got to do a thorough diagnostic of what they normally do and how that goes for them, what's worked and what hasn't worked, to really get to the heart of understanding the problem. Jordan, can you give us an example of how you might do that in
Yeah.
addition to the normal questions like what would you ask?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, but to give you some examples, I would be asking things like, what do you normally do when you face a hire like this? And how does that normally go for you?
Mm,
How well does it work usually? What kind of results have you experienced in the past? What methods have you tried so far on this particular hire? Have you been using other agencies? Or have you used agencies in the past on a hire like this? And if you have, on what basis have you been engaging with them? Do you ultimately feel confident in getting a solution using those same methods again this time? In my experience, Lou, I've found that by getting to the bottom of which methods have been used before and how effective and enjoyable they've been, I've found that through this process, I can get the client to start to realize and sometimes even get them to admit that the contingent approach hasn't been yielding particularly good results and it probably hasn't been particularly enjoyable.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're all brilliant questions, but one of the key ones in there is on what basis have you been engaging with the agencies before? Um, I found that by asking these questions with empathy as well, and then digging a little bit further, it exacerbates the pain. So, what I mean by that is, I'm so sorry to hear that. That must be so frustrating for you. And what impact did that have then on your time and your schedule? Or what impact did that have on the rest of the team? Or how did that affect overall project timelines? A good consultation and the questions that you ask at this stage will do three things. Enable you to determine which is the best method to use. So, is a retained solution even necessary? It will highlight the problems with past methods and start to get the client to realize that it's the methods that have been at fault here, not necessarily the individuals carrying it out. And finally, the empathy exacerbates the pain a bit more. All of this helps us to build credibility in our eventual recommendation.
Yeah, I found the exact same thing. So once you're clear on the situation and keen to talk through how you're going to solve their challenges, then comes the point where you need to switch emphasis and take that emphasis away from them and onto you. The first thing to do is give feedback first on the good stuff. Yeah, that's really exciting, Louise. It's really good to hear all about the plans for the next 12 months, the growth plans, whatever they've been telling you about that's good. The next thing I do is empathize with the challenges that they face. I can see how challenging this is for you. Let me reassure you, Louise, you're not alone. The market is getting more and more difficult for the best talent at the moment. Then I reassure that I both can help and, importantly, I really want to help. So the market is more challenging at the moment, Louise, but let me reassure you, I absolutely can help you with this. And I would love to help you with this. Perhaps I would give an example of some other clients that I've worked with recently who've faced the same challenge. And then the last thing I would do is I would ask for permission to share how I've been solving this exact problem for other clients of mine. So I've been saying, we've been solving this exact problem for your peers and your competitors. Would you mind, Louise, if I just took 10 minutes of your time to show you how?
Nice. That's so nice. Before we finish, we're just giving you a few tips today. Before we finish, just a reminder that retained search isn't always the right solution. There are three main instances where I wouldn't suggest that that's what we do. Firstly, if it's an easy to fill, straightforward position, it often isn't necessary to apply a structured and rigorous process. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. The premise of this is that the client is basically unlikely to pay a retainer if she doesn't need to. Having said that, what I find often happens is you work with them on other positions on this basis and they say, can we just do everything in that way? But if it isn't necessary, then you don't need to insist that that's the way that we work. And the exact reverse of that, if it's impossible to fill. So my caveat to this is that I believe all positions are fillable if the need from the client is there and the willingness to flex the parameters and find a solution together is there, which after all is what the retained search process is all about. But if the client is unpleasant and has expectations that are impossible to manage, or they will not commit to the process, then that spells trouble. So in those circumstances, I say no and walk away. And lastly, now I only now work on a retained basis. I would never work without financial commitment from my client, and I now love what I'm doing as a result. There are some consultants that prefer the contingent model. These are consultants that don't want to commit. They hate being tied to a client. If the going gets tough, they want to bail out. But those of you who really care about the service that you're providing, that care about your clients, and you want to do a proper job, then moving to retained will change your life. So we'd love to talk to you. There's time for questions. Please put your questions in the comments box and we'll come to as many of them as we can. If you like this and you're watching the recording back, click like, post a comment with some feedback. Follow us on YouTube. We release a new video every week. But most importantly, we really want to find out where you are with this, how you're feeling about retained work. And we offer you the opportunity to book some time with us for nothing, with no obligation. And we're going to send you the link or put it on the screen, I think, today. The diaries are quite full, but we have left some space next week to speak to you. So please book a call to have a chat with us. Okay, Keith.
We have a question.
Hi, Keith, I know you. Keith, how do you sell this to current clients that you have dealt with for years? Good question, Keith. So I'll take that one first and then you can dive in with any other comments. Clients that you dealt with for years, I'm presuming you're working with them on a contingent basis. The key to any kind of retained work, whether it's multi-hire work or single search mandates or pieces of intelligence, all for me come under the same banner of retained solutions, is that they are just that, is that they're solutions. The solutions to the challenge that we face. And often the challenge that we face is delivering our work and producing results. Producing results on a no-win, no-fee basis is incredibly difficult, especially in this market. In order for a client to move, I know I'm going around the houses to answer a question, but you'll see where I'm going in a second. In order to move a client from a contingent model to a retained model, there needs to be a problem somewhere. Sometimes the problem is on their side, and they're coming to you saying, we just need more CVs. Where are they? You're not delivering what you need to be delivering, and we're not getting the results that we're getting. That's the perfect opportunity to explain that it's incredibly difficult to deliver results on a no-win, no-fee basis. And here's how, here's why. And explaining the contingent model and why it's so challenging to deliver results on a no-win, no-fee basis is part of them understanding why the financial commitment does the exact opposite, and it enables us to deliver the results. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that there is no problem on the client side, and actually they're getting exactly what they want from you on a contingent basis and quite happy, thank you very much. But actually the problem's on our side, and we are taking all of the risk delivering a great service, but totally exposed to them saying, actually, can you just change what you're doing, or we've decided not to hire that anymore, actually we've just had a CV in from someone else. And the problem is actually ours. And in that case, the problem for them is that they run the risk of us stopping doing what we're doing. So the conversation is slightly different. It's, are you happy with the service that we're delivering? Yes, we are. Everything's brilliant. Just keep doing it. I'd like to keep doing that. I'd like to keep being able to deliver results for you, but here's my challenge. We're currently working with you on a no-win, no-fee basis with no financial commitment. And at any point, you can say, actually, stop, or I don't want you to do that anymore, or I've decided to do this instead. It might not be through any fault of your own. You might not deliberately set out to mislead me in that way, but it happens. And we know from the last couple of years, anything can happen. But I'm completely exposed and taking all of the risk and totally vulnerable to that, which means I have to balance my risk by working on other things at the same time, which means I cannot do what I need to do to keep providing you with these results, especially as the market is getting harder and harder. So in order for me to continue to deliver the results you have come to expect from me, we're going to need some financial commitment from you in order to make sure that we reach a result on every project. So what I'm saying, Keith, is it does depend on the circumstance. There isn't a standard fixed way for each client, but it does depend on where that client is with you and how well you're delivering against their requirements on a contingent basis. But hopefully that gives you a couple of examples of how to manage that.
Nice. I think I don't think I would add anything in terms of how you position that, Lou. I think everything you've said is absolutely right. I would probably just tell you a very quick story. I was speaking to a member of ours a couple of months back, and he was saying that he always felt a little apprehensive having these conversations with existing customers. Even though he was now having them and converting customers from contingent to retained, he still felt a little apprehensive. He said until he outsourced some front-end search work to an outsourced provider who did a lot of his research when he took on an assignment. And he said he'd worked with this company for several years and they'd always delivered, and he had a great relationship with them. And they would do the work and then deliver him the talent map along with the invoice. And he said one day they called me and said, it's getting much harder for us to do what we're doing. And actually, this doesn't need to cost you any more, but we just need a portion of the fee at the start on commencement. He said, I didn't even blink. It was like, no problem. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's sometimes easy for us to feel concerned and difficult about having these conversations. But imagine if you were on the other side of the fence with a supplier that you trust and you've worked with before,
Mm,
would you have a problem with it? I wouldn't.
exactly. Exactly. And the other point that you made on a coaching call or on one of our conversations, Jordan, was to say it's our duty to remain ahead of the curve on how to make sure the service that and the results that we're providing for our customers are the very best that they can be.
Yeah.
In order to do that, we have to keep adapting. One of our gurus and coaches says, there are three things that happens to a business: it evolves, or it stagnates, and it dies. We have to evolve and adapt to make sure that we're staying ahead of that curve. All we're doing here is exactly that, and informing our customers that to stay ahead and make sure that we are providing the best possible service, we need that commitment in order to do that. So it isn't a it shouldn't be a conversation we're frightened of. It should be our duty to keep
And
our
actually,
tools sharp and applying the best methodologies.
yeah. I mean, the other side of that coin is if you don't have that conversation and 12 months down the line, the client has a meeting with you and says, why have you stopped delivering? You've not filled any of our
Yeah,
roles over
yeah,
the past 12 months.
yeah,
And you were to say
totally.
to them, well, if I'm honest, I just needed some financial commitment, but I didn't want to have the conversation with you.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
do you say? Why didn't you just tell me?
I know, or worse, they say, I've got a really difficult conversation to have with you. One of our other suppliers has suggested that we enter a retained partnership, so we're
Yeah,
going to do it. And
yeah,
then all you do is just kick yourself that you didn't bloody have that conversation in the first place.
yeah, definitely.
But of course, selling it, as we always say, selling it and positioning it is one thing, delivering it is something completely different. And it is not just money up front and then a contingent service. It is absolutely I want to say catastrophic, but maybe that's a bit over dramatic. But it is a recipe for failure if you don't put a proper process in place to make sure that you're delivering against that financial commitment and you have parameters around what our commitment is in return.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
just a word of warning there. Okay, do we have any other questions?
You do.
Oh,
Yeah. You see that there from Andy?
Andy, yes. If you haven't worked retained before, how would you cover the area of giving examples of previous retained work? Good question. So for me, a bit of creative license is sometimes necessary at the beginning. You do need evidence. It is important that you provide evidence and reinforce what you're saying with that. Essentially, if you're a recruiter, an experienced recruiter, you do have experience in your market, so you will have positions that are similar that you have filled. You just don't need to talk about the method that you used to fulfill those requirements, and simply talk through the challenge that the customer faced and the fact that we solved that challenge in the in the immediate term when we're just building up our bank of evidence and experience. So basically what I'm saying is use the fact that you have placed those positions, um, but don't mention that they weren't retained. Essentially, the only bit you're leaving out is the payment model. The fact that you delivered the assignment is the important thing, and that you have the experience to be able to do that is what's important.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, if I think about a lot of the recruiters that I speak to that are potentially 100% contingent, have never worked on a retained basis, they almost all say, but at times I've followed a retained delivery process, I've headhunted. And so even though you haven't maybe worked on a retained basis before, you will have followed a robust delivery process. And there are elements of that process that you can use to explain to customers how you can
Hmm.
help solve the
Yeah,
challenges.
yeah, yeah. Good. I think there's another question, Charles. Best way to sell against other retained firms. It depends who. So I would always like to find out roughly what type of retained firm I'm up against. If it's a traditional or classical search firm, or if it's a younger, smaller boutique type search firm. And the reason that I'll do that is because there are different weak spots depending on who they are. For example, some of your bigger Shrek firms, for example, aren't necessarily specialist in their niche. And as a smaller firm or independent, we can be much more specialist than them. And I've won projects against big classical search firms because of that, by demonstrating my market knowledge and specialism and history of past mandates in this exact space. I've been able to win against the bigger, more generic firms. Some of the smaller boutique firms might not have a global reach or global capability, so doing research on what their breadth and depth of capability helps. The bigger Shrek firms or bigger search firms or traditional firms are quite rigid. So they're quite rigid in their process, they're rigid in their pricing, they're rigid in their timescales. We're able to be much more agile, much more dynamic, and much more flexible with commercials, with timelines, and process. So that's been a place that I've been able to win against some of those firms. I've also worked with clients that have been frustrated by the heavy reporting provided by traditional classical search firms. And actually, if you ask clients what they want, they are looking for results, not board level, lengthy pages of reports. All the reporting is lovely and really nice if that's what they want. But if that isn't what they want and all they want is results, then a quite simple, transparent way of working and sharing what you're doing live in real time is enough, and you don't need to burden them with long reporting. What else have I mentioned? I mean, commercially, we can be more agile. So the Shrek firms usually, or big search firms, won't move from 33%. And sometimes, especially if it's the first time that we're working with them and we want to demonstrate or be able to get in and have the opportunity to demonstrate capability, we can be a bit more flexible. I hope all of those pointers help. Can you think of anything else, Jordan?
I think I'd say sometimes there's almost a sweet spot in terms of salary where the Shrek firms don't want to go that low. But to us,
Yeah,
actually, I'm more than happy to work on a
yeah,
150 grand sales director position.
yeah,
But
yeah,
some of the Shrek firms wouldn't even touch that. They wouldn't get out of bed
yeah.
for that. So
Yes, yeah, true. Under about 300, 400,000 USD. They're not, haven't found they're that motivated to chase the business. And there's weaknesses in the sales process. It tends to be have a conversation, send over documents, and not show that much willingness to want to work with them. And by showing willing, I mean, that's another point, that they are lucky to have such strong brands, very strong reputation, very established networks, and a lot of business coming their way. So it's quite easy for them to walk away, and they wouldn't be as, shall we say, keen to pursue the client, to show willingness to work with them. So I've found that simply by doing that, sometimes they'll prefer to work with someone that's really keen. Hopefully that helps. Have we got another question?
yes,
Whoa,
we
Greg.
do. Yeah,
Hello,
it's
Greg.
a big one. Does it fit on the screen?
Yeah. In our market, we're finding that our strong network means that dozens of highly technical candidates are being referred to us. And we're then speccing those candidates out to our warm clients. Great, which is allowing us to build revenue quickly and consistently. I wonder if that's unique to our position in the market. And having done and benefited from loose training, I'm mindful we're now filling most of our jobs on a contingent basis. Oh, so funny. I'd love to get your take on whether or not you think, this model is sustainable. So, yes, Greg, I do. What I found is that they go really well together. The search work, and you've done a lot of this as well, Jordan, haven't you? That the
Yeah.
search work generates active candidates that you can then introduce and make introductions. And that's great. You make fast fees from superb candidates and end up with really happy clients. And what's wrong with that, right? I'm not I'm not an old-fashioned stickler for there has to be a thorough process if it isn't necessary. If a client is just happy to accept that candidate and hire them, and then brilliant, happy days, everyone wins. The only thing I would say avoid is proactively working on that position. Let's say, for example, if that candidate isn't actually right and the client rejects that candidate after the interview, is then going out and proactively working to find other candidates with no financial commitment. As long as, if they do want you to go out and be proactive, that we have some financial commitment and that we're covered for the work that we do. But if they don't, then that's fine, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience as well, it is rare. It depends on the level at which you're working, I suppose. But it is rare that you'll spec a candidate in and they'll just find a role for that person. Normally, it's potentially that you've provided them an answer to a problem and a possible solution. So there is an opportunity to open up a search from a spec CV as well.
Yeah, exactly. Some people don't just want one, they want to see all of what's available before they make a decision, in which case, yes, they can see this candidate, but let's launch the search in the background. And if this candidate turns out to be right, we'll just deduct what you've paid as a retainer from the fee anyway. So you'll only have paid what you would have paid, but you'll have the benefit of the backup of a shortlist if they're not right. Okay, that's all we've got time for today. So I've hoped that everything that we've shared with you today has been helpful. I would love to have a chat with you and find out about your situation and where you're up to, even if we can just give you some practical help on that call and you go away with something new or something helpful, we'll be happy. There's a link somewhere, isn't there, Charles? Is there? I know Charles lurking in the comments, but hopefully she'll be able to provide everybody with a link to be able to book in a consultation with us. So just say that's formally, but it's not. It's just a chat with us to find out a bit more about you. Link is posted. Great. Follow us on YouTube. We release a video a week. All sorts of stuff, all different perspectives. The feedback from that is that they really love it. Hit subscribe and then you get notified every time we release a new video. And if you've enjoyed this session, please let us know. Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks, Lou.
Nice to see you. Thank you, Charles, who is wonderful and sets these up brilliantly for us. We would really be lost. We'd still be lurking around in the green room trying to figure out how to make it happen.
Professional bit you don't see before me and Lou go in. How do we get our cameras on? And
what they might have done. They might have seen that. All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Charles. Thanks very much, Jordan. And we'll look forward to the next session, which was, I can't remember. It came up on the screen before. I probably should have read it out. Can you remember what it is, Jordan?
No.
Oh, well, join us next time for Mindset and Misnomers. There you go. That's what our next session is. There you go. Thanks, everybody. Have a brilliant day and a great weekend. And looking forward to getting to know you.
Bye now.